I cried 5 times. I couldn't walk for days. My toenails turned black and I was hallucinating all morning. And somewhere between hours 17 and 23, I asked myself, why the hell do I do this stuff? I was just finishing up a 103-kilometer run with over 5,000 meters of elevation gain in the mountains at elevation already, and I had barely trained for it. I just asked myself, why do I do this shit? Why do I do hard things? On the drive there, it was a 4-hour drive. I was like, why am I doing this? Why did I sign up? At the start line, I remember feeling crap for the first half of the race and just thinking to myself, why the hell do I do this? I remember hallucinating all morning. I literally saw a stick on the path and I thought it was a snake, and the person I was with, I was like, ah, it's a snake! I literally hallucinated all morning. I remember finishing, sitting down and being like, what was that? And then driving back with no sleep, getting back home, and then everyone else was asking me like, hey, how was your weekend? And I was like, yeah, just around 103K, blah, blah, blah. And I still haven't slept. And they're like, why do you do that? In today's video, I'm gonna try and figure out exactly that. I don't really know. I'm just gonna talk to you guys and I'm gonna figure out why I do hard things, and I'm gonna talk about my philosophy on it. Now the thing is when I was a kid, I didn't do hard things. When I was about 18, I think I had about a year and a half playtime on League of Legends, let alone CSGO, Xbox, PS4, all the games that I used to play. I was addicted to porn, I was addicted to gaming and food and sugar. I used to sneak out at lunchtime and get 5 chocolate bars. I was just a piece of shit, really. I went to a good school and I studied hard, I worked hard, but it's almost because I felt I had to. If it wasn't for the people around me, I'd probably be dead by now or in a really, really bad place. In that time of my life, I was doing easy things which made my life hard. Everything I did was no friction, effortless, easy peasy, and up here, it sucked. I didn't want to be alive, and I hated living in my brain. And now, when I do hard things all the time, I fucking love life. It's amazing. That's what I want to share with you guys today, which is why I do hard things. And the funny thing was there was a moment where I think a lot of it changed for me, which was I was at rugby training and a friend of mine, it got cancelled, and a friend of mine said, hey dude, you do realize you can turn those moves into pecs? Because I was obese, like I hit puberty 3 years late. I remember being in year 12, which is about like 16, 15, having a super high voice because I had so much fat on my body. My body was under so much stress and producing too much estrogen that I couldn't enter puberty. He looked at me and I had these big old man boobs, right? These big old moobs. And he said, yeah, you can turn those moobs into pecs, come to the gym with me. I remember going to the gym and having a hard workout and just feeling amazing afterwards. And there was something in me that just craved that feeling of doing something hard, getting home, hitting the pillow and being like, that was a good day. That started a journey for me into getting into powerlifting. I ended up deadlifting 280 kilos, breaking a few records along the way, getting into self-development. I read books, I listened to podcasts. I just got obsessed with trying to be better because that feeling that I had initially of, wow, I could have lived a life of that same person doing that same thing. And now I'm kind of happy with this person, but what else could I do? How else can I get better? And that eventually led to me looking at myself, realizing that I could deadlift and do all this weight, but I couldn't do a pull-up, I couldn't run a mile, and I was injured all over my body, and I was like 21. And so I got into calisthenics and bodyweight training. I got into running. Initially, I just wanted to run 5K. I've done Ironmans. I've done the David Goggins challenge, which is 4 miles every 4 hours for 2 days. I've done that twice, and I've also done 4 miles every 4 hours for 4 days. I've run a half marathon every day for a month. I've done a few ultras now. Done a lot of crazy shit. Yeah, I was just reflecting on it and being like, why do I do this to myself? Internally, I know it's just something that I do, and I know it's part of my identity, and it's something that I honestly couldn't live without now, but I wanted to go for a study and I wanted to see why I do this stuff, and I wanted to walk it through with you. So I think the first thing that I realized was that before, my life looked like this. Rough, like this. This was my stress throughout the day, right? And what that meant was that my baseline stress was like the limit for me to maybe get a stress response was like here. Because it wasn't necessarily the average, it was more about the peaks. And that's where I felt this kind of like initial stress response. I felt anxious all day, I felt stressed, I felt worried. My family used to call me the warrior because I was just worried all the time, you know? I was just like anxious, and I didn't want to go to school, I didn't want to do anything. This is more on like a micro scale rather than a macro scale, and I think it does exist on both. But I think when you do hard things in your day, like let's say you go for a morning run, right? And then maybe you do an evening workout, suddenly this becomes the baseline level of stress that you actually need to feel stressed, right? So let's say this is stress, and this is like throughout the day. And then this is almost like the same thing in terms of like a baseline. And now what I feel is like things that used to stress me out and get me anxious, like they don't even come on my radar, because I'm like, nothing's as hard as a run at 4:30 in the morning. Nothing's as hard as going on that stair climb for half an hour and absolutely sweating it out and it's sucking. And then on a macro scale, and this is the race t-shirt, nothing's as hard in these last few months as running for 22.5 hours. And so it makes life easy because everything comes back to this. I remember driving through America, and we had about a 12-hour drive, and I'd recently finished an ultra that was 10.5 hours. Kira was like, Ollie, are you sure you're gonna be okay? Because I had to do all the driving. And I was like, yeah, I just ran for 12 hours. I'm sure I can sit in a car for 10 hours. And it puts things in perspective. So I guess these kind of two things are linked, which is the amount of stress that I need to go through on a day-to-day basis is so much higher for it to even register. Because in my day I do hard things, but also in terms of like a macro level, day to day, week to week, things just don't stress me out as much, and my life's just a lot more easy. So that's the first thing. The second thing is actually from Stoics. It's memento mori, which what that means is meditate on your morality, which basically means you're gonna die. What that helped me realize was, okay, if I'm dying on my deathbed, what would I wanted to have done in my life? I probably would have wanted to do hard things. What this made me realize was like, okay, when I die, I want to be known as someone that is disciplined, someone that is strong, someone that is good for the community. The thing is we look at these terms like confidence or strong or disciplined. And in reality, what it means is actually it's a bundled term for lots of behaviors that lead up to calling that person something, right? So if someone's a fisherman, well, they fish, right? That's what they do. And so I looked at the end of my life and I was like, well, what do I want to be? And I was like, well, okay, if I was disciplined, what would I have to do to be disciplined? These are the things. And the thing is if you want the trait, then you have to go through the hard things to get the trait. It's just like a video game. Now, as you get more and more advanced, I always think of like RuneScape for you gamers. As you get up to like level 99, the thing that it takes more experience points to get to the next level, right? It gets harder. For me to become the person that I want to be and impress my future self, which is really the only thing that matters, I need to do hard things today, because when I look back, those are the moments that I'm going to remember. I'm not going to remember the days where I skipped the workout. I'm not going to remember the days that I did the workout, which is fine, but doing that big event, doing that hard thing, I will remember this for the rest of my life. Yeah, you are going to die, right? Like this stuff does end, and during the race, you almost start to feel that sense. And it kind of brings you on to the next point, which is this whole idea of focus. When you're in a race, I sometimes love them because you drown out everything else. I remember I did a challenge called the multi-grind, which was you start at 4 a.m., you finish at 10 p.m., and you do as many reps as you can of the grouse grind. And I got up to 11, which was Everest. So I did Mount Everest in a single day. And I remember during it, I was like, this is so nice, because all I have to do is focus on one singular goal, which is get up that mountain the next time. And then once I go up the mountain, it's get down it, right, do it again, do it again, do it again. The whole of life just fizzled away. All the problems, the running of the gym, the how are we going to pay the staff, the X, Y, and Z, it all just went away because in that moment, I had that focus on that one thing. And again, I like talking about things in terms of like micro and macro. So during the actual event, right, you get focus, but it's also really nice to have that focus of leading up to an event as well. I remember the months leading up to all these races that I've done. It's like you say no to everything else and you just dial in and focus on this one singular goal which you're going to do, which is the ultra or the grouse grind or the 4x4x4 challenge or whatever, right? And it's really nice because maybe when the rest of your life is so scattered, that one hard thing just focuses and narrows the mind, and it's lovely to work towards that thing, just in my experience. I'll tell you a quote from one of my idols. He said, when I was in my 20s, I thought it was all about the destination. When I was in my 30s, I realized it was all about the journey. Now I'm in my 40s, I realize it's all about the company, right? And so I think the thing here is community. When I was, again, 18 and I wasn't in this state of doing hard things, I didn't meet people who were doing hard things because I attracted who I was. But now, I remember, so on Sunday, I met some absolute incredible people, and I met people 3 weeks ago who are running the Badwater 135, which is 135 miles through Death Valley in the summertime. And then when I was doing the multi-grind, I'm talking to people and they're good friends of David Goggins. They saw him last week. And I'm like, whoa, this is cool. And I realized that a big part of my life is, I think I've said this before in a video, but my life's purpose is to do epic shit with epic people and be useful. That's all I want to do. And so when you do hard shit, you enter these kind of rooms, you know? You meet people who don't quit, they inspire you, and they bring you up. And when I think about the word motivation, I define it as the equal opposite of deprivation. And deprivation comes from the environment that you're in, especially the perceived deprivation. So again, this is why rich people can feel poor in an environment because they're not rich. In actual terms, they are, but who they compare themselves to, they feel poor. But poor people can feel rich because they compare themselves to other poor people. Fat people can feel in shape with their families all out of shape. Fit people can feel out of shape compared to the people they're comparing themselves to. And so for me, it's just like, I don't analyze my fuel. I want to get better. I want to do cool things. And so I try and get around people who are doing things better than me. And all of a sudden, I get really motivated and I want to do hard shit. And I want to do hard things. So that is a big thing, which is the community. It's the people that you find and the people that you're around. And I guess on that, it brings me to my last point. I think it's inspiring. And when I think about when I first got into running, powerlifting, remember that guy that said to me, hey, you can turn those moves into pecs. I remember David Goggins, I remember Ross Edgley, I remember even people like Joe Rogan, all the runners, etc. I just remember just looking at them and seeing them as these gods, these absolute savages who were just incredible. What they did is they shared their story, they broke it down, and they said, hey, you can do this too. I'm not special. I haven't got any special genetics. I haven't got anything. If anything, they shared what it feels like to be at the top. And I'm no way near at the top, especially in my world of where I want to go. But let me tell you a story. When we were first running the meetups for Cali Unity, I remember someone coming up to me and just saying, hey man, you don't know me, but you stopped me from killing myself. And in that moment, I had barely any following. I haven't got a following now. And maybe a few people, right, who know who I am. And I think I was just talking to him in person and I was just doing cool stuff. And after a few events and stuff, I used to share my story and I used to talk a lot to people in person. I think I've gone for coffee with this person, but he wasn't like a close friend. And what it taught me was, yes, things don't matter. And at that point in my life, I was very much a nihilist, which was nothing matters. Who cares? Like, why do anything? And in that moment, my whole worldview shifted. And what I realized was that everything matters. Every conversation matters. Every single post that I put up matters. Everything that I exist in this world and I'm doing, it does matter because of the butterfly effect, right? I can smile at someone on the street, they can have a good day, they might go home and again they're in a better mood, their family changes, everything's better. I might help someone at Cali Unity Gym, right? And I might hire someone and I might train them up for half a year and they might go on, they might change lives the rest of that. They might then go and make their own gym, right? And it's power, which is it can be used for good and it can be used for bad, and these things do spread. And so you know what, in my own little part of the world, I think I just want in my little part of the world, I just want things to be better. And so if I do hard stuff and I kind of forge that path for people around me, I think that's really worth it. And so just to conclude with all these, again, just to kind of summarize, it makes the daily life easier, but also it gets these big events, these big hard things that happen, and it's like, wow, this is nothing compared to 103K ultra, right? So micro and macro, you're gonna die. So like, what do you wanna do with your life? And also, what kind of person do you wanna become? And what does that person do? Again, you can't have the trait without doing the behaviors to get the trait. You can't just stare at a mirror and say, I am disciplined, because when discipline comes up and needs to be used, that's when you show you're disciplined, right? Again, focus. It narrows the focus and dials you into doing something, but also in the actual event, it's beautiful. You feel more focused, you understand the task at hand and you want to go for it. Community, you meet incredible people, and you get inspired along the way, but also then you can inspire and you can help people along the way. Now, look, I don't do hard things because I just necessarily like pain. I do these things because I actually used to live in pain, passively, quietly, and it was in a body and mind that I hated in myself. And now I run towards that discomfort. I seek challenges, because I know that, hey, for me, that's where happiness is. That's where freedom is. That's where life becomes easy. And I know that in my experience, the harder the challenges that I do, the easier life becomes. So when you see me in future on this channel limping or pulling off black toenails or on the floor crying, in that moment, I'm probably saying to myself, why the fuck do I do this to myself? And that's exactly why I do it. Because in those moments when I question those things, that's when I find out who I truly am. That's when I go back to those moments when I was 18 and I was depressed and I was suicidal and I had addictions and I was good for no one. That's when I realized that all the hard work leads up to this moment. It makes it so fucking worth it in those hard times. And hey, a big reason why you do these things is because of that moment. You know, you want to reach that moment when you're sitting there being like, why do I do this to myself? Because that's when you find out why you're alive, right? Why do you keep going? Why do you do these things? And that for me is a beautiful thing. So look, guys, hopefully you got something from this and you joined me on my journey of trying to explore why I do hard things. Hopefully this has kind of summarized a lot of those. And I would just challenge you, the next time you say to yourself that I want to be disciplined and I want to be motivated, just realize that that only counts in that moment when discipline is required. And the thing is people can say they're loyal until a girl comes up to them and asks to sleep with them, and that's when you show you're loyal. You can't say you're loyal or not without being tested. You can't say you're disciplined without being tested. That's the moment when you do it. And these events are a really good time to test what you're made of and to work towards that. So I would challenge you, set your sights on something bigger, work on something that's harder, work on something that scares you. Because when you do that, the rest of your life is going to be easy. I promise you. If you guys enjoyed this, like, comment, subscribe, share this with a friend who does hard things. Maybe they resonate. Share with a friend that isn't doing hard things. Maybe you feel like they need to as well. Guys, this channel is all about me sharing what I've learned about my life. And hey, if this gets no views, that's absolutely fine. I'm happy with it. But just like that person that came up to me and said, hey man, you don't know who I am, but you helped me stop me from killing myself. If this helps one person, that's fucking worth it. All right, guys, you have an amazing day. Do something hard today, and I'll see you tomorrow.